I think it might be a little bit weird if I say it, but for a lawyer to say it. But I think that the less the regulator puts effort in making laws, the better for the industry.
Games and Names Podcast.
Hey there! Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and share this episode. It's really important for us. And now, to the episode itself. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stan. I'm VP of Product at AppMagic.
And I'm Jesse, Senior Game Designer at Product Madness. So we're your co-hosts here on the Names and Games Podcast.
A podcast where we talk about games and people in them. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with AppMagic, an analytical tool for analyzing mobile markets and gaining actionable insights.
On today's episode, we're talking about the game industry's legal labyrinths. But we're not alone on this journey.
Our guests today are Alexandra, the co-founder of Versus and Futura consulting companies uniting more than 100 experts, and Alina, head of digital and game dev. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Alexandra, Alina, welcome to the cast. So, Alexandra, why don't you just introduce yourself and your company to us and our audience?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for invitation. I'm so delighted to be here. And yes, I'm co-founder of a quite big consulting group. And we have a separate team of lawyers who are focused only on game development, fintech, media, and technology sphere. We operate practically worldwide from Singapore, Hong Kong, MENA, European Union, and try to help game dev or IT companies. So about me, originally I'm from St. Petersburg. So I'm used to gray sky and gray ground. But now I'm living in Dubai and I survived my first summer here.
Oh, wow.
So as a team, we have a very wide range of skills, but my core expertise and passion is intellectual property. I'm practicing intellectual property law approximately for 12 years. Before it was Ernst & Young and now in my own company. And I love everything related to creative business and especially when we talk about games.
Cool. That's really great.
Amazing.
Yeah, Alina, what about you? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm working with Alexandra at Versus and Futura companies and heading the game dev development section. So mostly I've been doing law for more than 10 years and specifically doing game dev for more than 5 years. And I assume that doing and practicing law in game dev is the most fun the lawyer can have generally in this career. None of this can be compared to doing the lawyering in the game dev sphere. So I really love it. And also I'm a little bit gamer myself. I mean, I cannot call myself a true gamer. I cannot probably compare to you guys or our listeners, but I really love the games. I love playing them and I love doing them at work. So basically it's a win-win situation for me. And I live in Dubai as well right now. So yeah, currently suffering from the lack of forests and gray sky, but it's okay. I love it.
Wow, amazing. Both of you, welcome. Welcome to the cast. We're really excited to dive into this topic with you guys because I think it's something we don't hear about all too often, the legal component of this industry, which has grown over time. Right, Stan?
Yeah, it is so. Like, we are a big business right now. We're big boys and girls, and gaming industry is maturing. It's a serious thing. But yet there are still a lot of gray areas there, especially considering different legal procedures. So is it possible to copyright or make a patent on your game mechanic or game at whole? What to do when you find a clone of your game and it earns more money and more revenue than your original game? What is the procedure in general? How you can help yourself and how can you protect yourself from troll patents? So these and much more we want to discuss today.
Disclaimer here. I know very little about this topic. I'm sailing in waters truly outside of my expertise, and that might be the same case for many of our listeners,
and for me as well. So we're in the same boat here. Sailing it.
We're very happy you're here, because without you, this topic wouldn't have made much sense, right? Let's first unpack that thing that Alexandra was talking about. There's a lot of laws out there on the books from kind of, parallel, adjacent industries, film, perhaps other kinds of media. And we can see that those laws can be applied to the gaming industry to some extent. So I want to kind of mix that. And Alina, a follow-up question to you. What are some instances in which we see these laws being applied in gaming that you would consider to be almost like causing problems? Is that the case? Like, what are the pitfalls of taking parts of law from one industry and applying them to games?
I wouldn't say that there's a pitfall, and I wouldn't say that there is something wrong with that. Actually, this is how we work right now. We take the laws from other industries and apply them to game dev, and I can't say that that's gone wrong. In my opinion, it's actually... Again, I wouldn't say that there is a law for movie industry, and I wouldn't say there is a law for media industry. There are general laws that just govern the more or less the same type of relationship. There is a copyright law, and it applies both to movies, it applies both to journalists, it applies even to influencers that we have right now on Instagram. So the laws are more or less the same, and they apply to different types of industries. And game dev is not an exception here. Of course, there are certain specific, might be specific laws for the movie industry, because there is there are just different types of relationship there that are quite specific for this. Like, there is a producer usually, there is usually a director, there are usually actors, and of course it has just some similarities with the movie, with the gaming, because we also have more or less the same type of roles in games, because we have the voices, we have the guys who do the voicing, we have people who engage together in one team to do the code, to do the art, and the idea, again, more or less the same. It's just how we implement it. I hope it's understandable.
Yeah, and just to add, what you need to know about intellectual property law, that generally it's international law, and it's only about tools. We, as Alina mentioned, we have copyright, we have trademarks, we have patents, and we have know-how, and that's it. We have only like several instruments how to protect your intellectual property, and I think that all famous countries, and not only famous, but like approximately all countries in the world, they use these tools. Some of them has know-how, some of them doesn't have this tool, but trademarks and copyright are quite common. Moreover, we have a Berne Convention, which was created more than 100 years ago, and it has over 180 participants. So a lot of countries, includes all Asian countries like China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and etc. All European countries, all America, Latin American countries, and so on. Like more than 150 countries are participants of this convention. So we have quite very similar tools how to protect intellectual property, and intellectual property anywhere in game dev or in any other creative business. So it's how it's in books. In practice, sure, we have very different approach, which is different in any country. How any country implement these rules in its jurisdiction, in its procedures.
You know what? I think that's the moment when our boat was a little bit shaking. So maybe that's the best time to just go through all these 4 terms, Alexandra, you've mentioned, and just in simple words explain each and every one of them. Like, if I recall it correctly, copyright, trademark, know-how, and patent. These 4, right? Yeah. So let's go word by word. The first one was copyright, I guess. So what's that?
has mentioned, most of the countries recognize them as the concepts that work in their countries as well. So yeah, copyright is something that arises right from the start when something was invented. So let's say you create a piece of work, a piece of art, piece of literature, piece of music, whatever. So from the moment something creative was started, from that moment you become the author of the creative work, and basically you get the copyright. And actually this is the biggest distinction between copyright and rights to the copyright from trademark and patents, because in order to get rights for patent and trademark you have to go and register it. So once you go to the state authority or whatever and you get the paper, I am the right holder of this patent, I'm the right holder of this trademark. From this moment only, you can also claim your rights. This is the difference from the copyright. You become the author and the copyright holder right from the moment you created something. So basically, most of the games we know don't really need any registration in order to be valid for protection or whatever. So basically, you already, the authors of these games, the authors and the people who collected the rights to themselves are already able to protect them. They are already ready to promote them, to get money from it, and whatever, just to enjoy the full copyright. So basically, that's the difference.
So what can I copyright? Like what falls under the protection of copyright?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, the original answer would be anything that is creative and original. So usually pieces of music, literature texts, the scripts, level design maybe, usually the documents that level design is implemented in, any art, any code, any piece of code. So basically a game is a complex object that consists of different elements, and all of them are copyright objects, and together it's a complex, hard to maybe understand, but it's a complex of many objects, not just one object itself. And yes, there are usually a lot of authors that create the game itself, because all of them have their own specialization. And yeah, usually there is one person or one company that collects all these copyright rights on one company or one person via the contracts or employment contracts or whatever. And usually there is one right holder to the game, because he should do the right job to collect all these rights from all the authors of the small pieces of this game.
All right, that's copyright. So what's a patent then? How does that differ? Alexandra, can you describe the difference there?
Alina told us about copyright. And as I mentioned, we have a General Copyright Act, Berne Convention, which has participants like 180 countries. So when you copyright something, like you created your code, your game, your interface, or anything, image, you already have this copyright. Never mind where you are, in London, in Dubai, in Tbilisi, or anywhere. When we talk about trademarks or patents, you can possess a right to this patent or to this trademark only on the territory which where you has registered your right. So it's much more complicated, and you need to choose when you want to register your trademark or you want to register your patents. You need to choose countries which you are focused on. And first of all, you need to check if anybody has a similar trademark or a similar patent. And only then, when you're completely sure that nobody has something similar, you can possess your own patent, you can register your own trademark, your own patent. So it's a much more complicated procedure how to protect intellectual property via this method.
So I have a question. If everything down to the code of my game could be protected under copyright, and copyright is valid everywhere, everywhere within the signatories of that treaty that you were talking about, or that agreement that you were talking about, right, Alexandra? What do I need to patent? What kind of things do your clients, people in the game dev industry, what kind of things do they patent?
Yeah, I would step up here. I would say that usually the idea of patenting is when you protect an invention. And here is the core idea is what is an invention. Invention should be something that nobody has done before, and the concept of it should be completely new to all the users. So basically, when you write a code, of course it's unique, of course it's original, nobody has written it before, but it's usually not an invention itself. It's not something like the concept that changes the game industry itself or how the users should play or something. So for this reason, patent is really something that is really rare, because really true R&D centers usually work to create patents, not just software developers. And second of all, as Alexandra has mentioned, you have to patent it in different jurisdictions, and it usually takes years to patent something. It's not something you can do it in 1 month or 2 months. This is something that should go through very thorough expertise of the local authority that's in charge of patenting a specific country, first of all. And second of all, it's really expensive. I wouldn't say that it's something that every company can afford. Really do one patent in one jurisdiction can cost you a fortune, and doing it in several, only really big companies can afford them. And I'm sure we will talk about that in the end, or maybe we can bring it up now. But really, only the most prominent companies right now in the game dev industry, like Nintendo or like Warner Brothers, can afford patenting, especially not just in one country, but in several.
Say we're a small studio, we're creating mobile games, and we ended up with a very interesting idea of core gameplay, very sticky, very, very unique. And then there is a big company out there who just decided to copy it, changing one line of code or one image. And even though our game is copyrighted, we can't sue them. So it basically means that from the moment we're in global launch, so any other company can download our game and can try it. They can totally copy it, change, for example, the appearance of the main character, and then using their power, their marketing budgets, earn much more than us. Is it correct?
I would say 50-50. I would say on the one hand, it is correct that, yes, anyone can take what you make public, whatever you disclose. And yes, if the changes are great enough and the changes are really crucial, then you probably will not be able to have any rights to claim. However, again, it's a matter of what we say, but by copying, because sometimes copying just one little thing, of course, it doesn't change anything and you can still sue the guys. However, if the changes are there are many of them, and the original is really different from whatever is in the outcome, then it's probably hard to say that the copyright really can protect you, because the changes were introduced and there are so many of them that you cannot really recognize the original from the copied version of the game. So it's hard to say right now what will be the outcome of your example, because we need to look at both games. And usually this is what we do. What our clients bring to us, lawyers, They come to us, they bring us, our game was completely copycat. There was a completely copycat. It was completely copied. But we look at them and we see two different games with no real copying. And sometimes it's really hard for us to forecast what will be the outcome, because the copying wasn't that obvious for us.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like all these, we're talking about them as if these are hard and fast rules that always apply like black on whites. But at the end of the day, you guys are in this industry for a reason. You're interpreting the law. You're interpreting the creative things that you see, the games in question, and of course comparing the two and seeing where the answer lies. So it's a bit of a gray zone, right? At the end of the day.
Yes, I agree. And I would also add that, of course, there are more hyper-casual games in the world than AAA projects, of course. And hyper-casual is such a genre where, games come out so fast and they, of course, copy each other in this or that way. And sometimes it's really hard for us to understand whether it's a real copycat or, two different people just had the same thought in different parts of the world at the same time. Why not? It's possible. So they were just, inspired by the same movie or the same other game that they had a look at. So basically, yes, it's pretty hard to say sometimes whether it was copycatted or just, it came to your mind simultaneously with another person. And as for the hyper-casual games, I would like to add one thing, is that, of course, sometimes it's hard to claim whether there was, a copyright violation on the one hand, or on the other hand, there was just, misleading or complete copying of a game so that another user would mislead your game for another game. So it's another practice that some, bad faith players in game dev market use. So on the one hand, hypercasual is the first genre that you think of when you think that, oh my God, it's impossible to protect anything there. But on the other hand, we know some cases, and there are some companies like Voodoo, and I believe that you had an episode with a guy from Voodoo.
Yes, we did.
So they are actually the one that have really great lawyers, probably working on that case. So they had several cases, especially in French courts, where they proved that their games were not only copyrighted, but they were copycatted. But also that there was a specific misleading situation where a certain app was trying to mislead users so that their game was original Voodoo's game. So that was a really interesting case. So I believe it was concerning the wood turning, the game about the wood carving. So basically the whole game was about carving different wood objects. And so they had the original game, wood turning, and the copycat game called Wood Shop. And the idea of the game was the same, carving the wood. but itself, it wasn't copied. So the art wasn't copied, the music wasn't copied, the code wasn't copied, just the idea was copied. And Voodoo somehow managed to claim, and they succeeded in this case, that the idea of the game was theirs, and the copycat app was just trying to gain the popularity based on the popularity of the original Voodoo game. That's a really outstanding case, but they won. That's something
very interesting. But I mean, that is Voodoo, right? Voodoo with Voodoo level resources is able to win that case,
and lawyers.
And Voodoo level lawyers, But this is Alexandra.
I just wanted to add that it's not about intellectual property, how to protect it. It's about more about unfair competition. And we can say that it's the fifth instrument, how to protect your game. It's not about how to protect methodic or code, but it's about competition. When we see two games, they are completely different, but we see consequences, we see behavior of your opponent, and this behavior is unfair because it misleads consumers, it tries to benefit from your games, from your reputation, and in legal sphere it's called unfair competition.
We talked about art, we talked about code, but is it possible to patent or make a know-how for a game mechanic or game design system? Is it? And if yes, what are the criteria?
This is the hardest question in the legal world. And probably it will be hard to disclose it here in the format of this podcast, but just to try to outline. General rule is no. It's not possible to protect mechanic itself because the idea, as we said, because it's mostly the concept, the idea, and it actually can be thought about by different people in different parts of the world at the same time. However, at the same time, there are certain cases where mechanics were possible to be patented, not copyrighted, but patented. And it happened. I think I already mentioned that Nintendo has one of the biggest portfolio of patents in the career, and more than 8,000 patents Nintendo has.
Wow.
Warner Brothers had a lot of patents. So they are really, really working on that. They have really their own R&D centers. They have thousands of lawyers who are in charge of this. And this is a strategy that they've been choosing, and probably successful strategy. However, at the same time, I would say that although they have so many patents, they don't really make money on that. This is something they use on their own. And I haven't seen actually a lot of court cases where Nintendo would go and sue someone for using their patented technology, because as we said, it's open. Anybody can take it since it's patented. However, at the same time, so although they have these patents, it doesn't mean automatically that they go and sue everyone in the market. But at the same time, I've read a lot about their strategy, and most of the game dev industry are not happy about it. Most of the comments I read were like really aggressive, like they are really limiting the freedom, they're limiting the creativity, and a lot of game dev people that we've been talking about says that this effect of this patenting will likely discourage developers from adopting features that have been inspired by the patents of Warner Brothers or Nintendo, or the big guys who, of course, have the money to go sue everyone else. So it's just answering your question. Yes, it's possible. I wouldn't say that it's 100% possible. It's always something at the discretion of the patent authority who is in charge of examining the patent itself. So a lot of patents are turned down. A lot of patents are not actually patented in the end. And as I told you, it's a long process for 2-3 years in each separate country. And so a lot of requests just don't succeed in the end. But yes, of course, there are certain patents, especially in game industry, it happens so. But at the end of the day, I can't say that there is a, profound practice of patenting everything you have, or, go protect everything by patent. I would say that it's still an exception rather than a rule, and only the big guys can afford it.
Mm-hmm. So thinking of examples, you've mentioned Warner Brothers, and if I recall it correctly, they had their Nemesis system patented, so the one from Shadow of Mordor and the sequel game, and they spent a lot of time trying to patent it. So they began it in 2K15, and only succeeded a couple of years ago, I think. So it just was like 7 or 8 years, a lot of time. And the system itself is pretty complex. So I had a look in the original patent, and it's legal stuff, legal language, so it was a bit hard for me. But in general, it seems that there is a higher chance for having a patent for both something new and complex. So not just one game mechanic, but a complex system of game mechanics interacting with each other, because it's usually mean that there is a bigger chance that it will be unique in the end.
Yes, I agree. And yes, you were correct mentioning that patent. This is one of the most prominent one, especially like what game dev lawyers talk about. This patent it took really long for that patent to be registered finally. I believe it took like 5 years or something. And I think it was granted the patent rights only in 2021. If I'm not wrong. So yeah, basically it took them really long to get it registered. And at the end of the day, that's a really interesting technology, which is, if I understand it correctly, is all about teaching the player characters to react the certain way to the way the user plays with it, and it learns from the previous behavior of the player to get stronger and stronger, so that the players get harder to be the bosses in the end of the day. So I don't really think that this is something crazy unique about it. I believe that a lot of game dev developers might have thought about it at least, and maybe even implemented something more or less in that way. I don't know what will be the strategy of Nintendo towards it. Will they, sue everyone, or will they let it go? Interesting. Let's see how it goes. But I haven't seen about any court case concerning this specific patent or any other Nintendo patents in the past couple of years. Of course, there were cases. I know that they've been in court for several times for that as well. Also, they were sued for some patents. So it's, it's a long battle. Sometimes you get sued. Sometimes you sue someone. It's okay.
It's a real shame, like in an industry that thrives on iteration and inspiration between extremely creative teams of people. These patents kind of feel like just shutting that down, especially in the case of the Nemesis system. I actually have a personal connection with it. I wrote my master's thesis all about this system and about how brilliant it was at kind of reinventing how games can tell stories. And unfortunately now it will... Only Warner Brothers can effectively or cheaply, I suppose, iterate on that system. So the iteration of that idea will slow down. What are some of the motivations that a company has for patenting, do you think? Can you guys speak to that? Alexandra, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that there are two sides to this coin, and I suppose that the first and the most crucial one is not about protection, but is maybe about how not to infringe other rights. For example, when we talk about big companies, I told with lawyers from these big companies, and they told me that it's very important for them not to infringe other rights. And they have a lot of cases with patent trolls. We just don't know about these cases because it's like quite confidential. But very often these big companies suffer from patent trolls or from unfair competitors who tries to sue them for infringement of trademarks, of patents or something. Because it's quite big money, especially when we talk about big markets like America, for example. It's quite big money compensations for infringement of somebody's trademark or patent. And I suppose that a lot of companies don't want to sue somebody. And I think that that fact that Alina said, we don't see a lot of cases when we see, for example, Nintendo with such a big portfolio sues another companies. No, we just see that they has this portfolio, and I think it's about this infringement. They want to be first, and they don't want to suffer from these suits from another companies.
Okay, interesting. Another metaphor here. So like these big companies like Warner Brothers, like Nintendo, are like whales, right? They're huge and they're really creative. Of course, they're generating all these things. There are all these patent trolls, which are like little annoying fish that want to claim that they made the thing before the big guy did it. Before, for example, Shadow of Mordor came up with this, the designers came up with this brilliant system. And they would go attack Monolith or Warner Brothers or whoever is the patent holder. It is Warner Brothers, right? So, they would then claim that Warner Brothers stole the idea from them. So actually, such a patent for the Nemesis system is less of like a big, FU to the rest of the industry, you're not allowed to play with this, and more of like a defensive move for such a large player. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, like a shield. Like also enormous shield.
Hey, there you go. You're using the other metaphor. Cool, interesting, well explained. Thank you very much, Alexandra and Alina.
It's a good moment to turn into a more practical side of the question. So say, we've got a little thing here when we with Jesse try to imagine that we are a small studio making games and asking stupid questions. So say we're a small studio making games and we want to be protected as much as we can. So in advance, for example, there is a game we want to launch. What should we do? How can we fight the upcoming clones of our game, for example? Or should we make a trademark and use part of our revenue right now for it? So what will you recommend?
If you don't mind, I would start. So first of all, I would say that before even you go into fight someone else and protect yourself from the outer world, you should think about the inside world of your game and think about how you would structure your relationship with the developers, with the art people, with the soundtrack people, with everyone who creates the game. And as I told you in the beginning, the company who is the right holder is usually someone who collects the rights from the authors of small pieces of the game. And this is the first thing you should start with. You should start with collecting correctly and legally correctly all the rights from all the authors that work for you. And I would say that this is the first and the most crucial thing, because sometimes, you create code with 10, let's say, software developers, and one leaves and steals the code. This is something you should first think about before you even launch your game or before you even start thinking about protecting your game from third parties, So yes, I would say that first thing to think about is how you manage your people, your employees, your contractors, firstly from the leakages, and secondly, just how you correctly collect it. And this is something to think about even if there is no violation, because let's say you have a publisher, later on you have investor, and investors, before they put the money into you, they hire lawyers to check that everything is correct from the intellectual property side. And of course, they hire someone like us, and we come and see that there is no contract. Everybody was paid in cash, nobody really signed anything, no rights were collected. And then, we tell this to the investor, and investor says, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. And this deal won't happen. And I would say that this is the first thing to think about, how you correctly correct all the copyright on the company that you started, or on yourself if there is no company. So that is the first thing to think about. Second thing, yes, once you get launched, just to register a trademark is a great idea. I think we already talked a lot about how important it is, and at least in one or two locations. I would recommend starting with the United States and European Union as just two most, popular jurisdictions where most users are and most players are and most revenue comes from. And first of all, and secondly, because most of the stores that we know about are the American companies, Apple, Google Play, Roblox, Steam, all of them American companies, and they abide by the American laws. So starting from registering your trademark in America is a great just thought to have. I would say that these two steps can already prevent most of the troubles that you might get into. But of course, then if you've done this and you are like, I have extra money for the lawyers, what can I do next? Of course, we can come up with a lot of ideas what you can do next. But this is something, the top two things I would recommend doing. Alexandra, maybe you could add up something here, or is it correct?
I think that's a base, yes.
Well, I do have a follow-up, and I'll direct it at you, Alexandra. So something you mentioned in passing, Alina, is, the big stores and platforms, Steam, Google Play, Google, I guess, or Alphabet or whatever we call it these days, and Apple are based in the US. They abide by the US laws. Now, that's something you mentioned in passing. Is that so? If I register myself with a patent or trademark, let's say trademark in the US, Steam, of course, being a US-based company, does that mean that Steam will recognize my trademark in all jurisdictions that it is that it's on? Like computers, like in whatever continent it is, be it South America, Africa, Australia, any nation in any of those places, or am I understanding that incorrectly? Alina, okay, so listeners, for those who cannot see, Alina just made the international hand sign for sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, Alina, what do you want to say?
I thought that the question was for you. Okay, no problem. So my point is that, of course, since most of the stores are the American companies, of course, they first, what they are looking at if you have American registration of trademark or if you have American patent or whatever. But it doesn't really mean that once you registered the American trademark, you're good, because since I told you and Alexandra told you that trademarks and patents, they are registered for each country specifically. You cannot have a trademark. I mean, you can if you're rich enough to register your trademark in all countries in the world, but usually you just choose the top priority countries and register there. And what does it mean in terms of the stores? It means that once you have your trademark and there is another game coming up with something very similar to a trademark and trying to violate it, probably you just create a request for the store to delete it, and usually they abide by it. But as a rule, if we're talking only about the trademarks, they will delete it only from the market where you have the trademark. So basically, if you have American trademark, they will ban it only in America and it will still be valid for all the other countries. But it works another way for the copyright. We already talked about the difference between that. As copyright works all over the world, there is a special system that helps battling copyright protection, and it's called DMCA. Basically, it's an American Digital Millennium Act.
Sounds like a song name, like DMCA.
It's YMCA. It was YMCA.
Careful, they have a copyright on that. Be careful, man. They're going to come for us.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, that's a law in America. It was introduced 20 years ago. It was end of 90s, I believe. So that's why it's called Millennium. The idea is that this is a law that protects the copyright, and most of the platforms have to abide by it. And if you are sure that your game was stolen, you can go via this system and ask the platform to delete the copycat game or whatever, and it will be deleted from everywhere. That's the difference with a trademark. If you go have a claim with a trademark, it will be deleted only from the country where you have the trademark. And if you go with a copyright claim, it will delete everywhere. This is something lawyers usually use. This is something really important to know for those who can't afford lawyers and want to do that themselves. So DMCA claim system is really great and it is really working.
But this is a US law, so it applies to US companies. However, those US companies, aka all the big, at least Western platforms to download games, are based in the US. So DMCA is a great tool to be able to take down copyright infringements across the world.
Yeah, I have a case. I want to bring it up. So basically, as we told you that usually if you have a copyright violation, you go to the store and it delete it. And usually if the store doesn't do it, you go sue the guys in the court and you get your decision. However, there's one case that's really outstanding and I haven't seen anything like this before. So it was Ubisoft. I believe it's 2021 or 22. So it's a recent case. So they decided not just to sue the bad guys, so the guys who allegedly copied their game, but they also sued the App Store and the Google Play together. So they were all like co-violators, like they sued all of them together, and they succeeded actually. So the idea, I think that why they did it, I'm trying to understand the logic of their lawyers. Why did they decide to do that? It was maybe easier for them to sue, to raise one case, and the next day all the platforms deleted the alleged copyright violator. They just wanted to raise an awareness. Guys, we're here, we're really serious about it. So I think that this was just their strategy, not to go to each store specifically and battle with this game in each store separately, but rather go to one court and show to the whole world community we are after those guys. So that was really effective. And actually that wasn't just a cheap clone or something. It was a game called Area F2, and it was really successful. It gained roughly 6 million users across the App Store, and they had their revenue about $500,000 for first month. So it wasn't just like a cheap game. It was a big game that they just turned down.
Crazy big.
Yes, and
it's huge.
Yes, and so they sued not only the owners of that game, but also the Google Play and App Store together. So they were like co-violators.
Wow.
Hopefully setting some precedent for the future so that other companies are a little bit less likely to try the same kind of trick, right?
Yeah,
That's
I guess
what
so.
You would think.
Yeah, I think so. So we've got only one thing left. As usual, we've got a real neat tradition here. We try to come up with one game recommendation. It might be a mobile game, a PC, a console, an oldie, something brand new, anything that you love and you want to share. So maybe I can start this time. So I was thinking about a low-hanging fruit and talking about Ace Attorney series, but it will be a cheat. So I think I will go with a lore-based game as well, but another one. It's called Aviary Attorney. Not sure you've heard about it. So it came, I think, 5 years ago or so. It's based in the 18th century French, and it's all about birds, like anthropomorphic birds, suing each other and fighting with each other in the court. So it's kind of like Ace Attorney, but the visual style is absolutely different. It's closer to the 18th century gravures, and it's just so stylish and so interesting and so funny because we've got all these birds, with canes in cylinders, cursing and trying to sue each other.
What do they sue each other about? Like whose nest is on whose property,
exactly. Or whose egg is this? Is it a cuckoo egg or something like that?
Amazing.
Yeah. So that will be my choice. Yes. What about you? What's your choice today?
So I was thinking about this as well, kind of in line with the topic, and not necessarily a game about lawyers, but a game about law and choosing whether to break it or follow it. The game Papers, Please, if you're familiar with it. Of course, a beautiful game about ethics and decision making and consequences, and of course, set in a kind of authoritarian state where the main character needs to both feed his family, but also deal with people who are trying to get in. You're an immigration officer. It's a very kind of old game. We all are nodding. We all kind of have heard of it before. I'm sure our listeners are like, you don't need to explain Papers, Please to us. But just in case, I think it's a great game and maybe worth reevaluating if we're thinking about truth and law. That'd be my recommendation.
I think we all have soundtrack from Papers, Please right now playing in our heads. This heavy soundtrack.
Glory toward Tosca. I think that's what is the name of the country. Yeah.
And also just talk about like soul-crushing aesthetics. Like it really the game visually and indeed with sound as well does a great job of communicating the experience of what it must be like to be that customs agent, that border guard. Yeah. So, Alexandra, do you have a recommendation for us?
It's not new. I think that everybody knows this game, but it's my favorite one. It's Detroit Become Human.
Oh,
I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful visually. It's very beautiful. And I love in this game that it's about choices. And it's like in life, a lot of choices and a lot of consequences. And maybe as a lawyer, I think about a lot of options and consequences. And in this game, you can choose different endings, and it's based on choices you made. So I love this type of games, and I love this one.
Nice, great recommendation.
Yeah, it is. I think this game still outshines even after all these years. It's one of the most complicated narrative system out there with different choices and consequences of these choices. So yeah, Alexandra, great one.
And it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful visually.
It is true. It is true. Elina, what about you? Yeah.
I have two games in mind, if you don't mind, if I can come up with two.
Yeah.
So
we'll allow it. It's fine.
So first of all, of course, I'm famous for loving this game. It's called Disco Elysium. I mean, I cannot come and pass by without not recommending this one. Nice. Also about choices, also a narrative game. I believe I read somewhere that the text in this game, in this volume, was more than 3 War and Pieces altogether, like in the amount of pages that this texts were about.
Crazy.
And it's a crazy game. I love it. And there is nothing. I've been playing it like 4 or 5 times in a row. Every time have different outcome, every time playing it differently. So it's really nice. But another game, if we're talking about anti-utopias, and I believe that Papers, Please, Detroit Becoming Human, not sure about the lawyering birds game, but probably maybe it falls into this category as well. So the game I would recommend is Road 96. It's a game I've been playing recently. Major world events kind of inspires to play this game. So basically, it's a game about America turning evil, turning into totalitarianism, and you play as a teenager trying to escape it. And there are a lot of ways to cross the border and a lot of choices that you also have to make. So I believe that the games we recommend today are about choices. So make the right choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Great recommendation. Thank you.
All right. Then I think we are set. We've got a wonderful set of recommendations. We had a wonderful talk with Alina and Alexandra. So, ladies, thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge. I definitely feel much more enlightened right now and at least understanding what is going on in the legal world. A little bit. Just like a little bit, but still. So, thank you for being with us today. And
thank you.
And to all the viewers and listeners out there, thank you for being with us. Thank you for just staying up to this moment. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.